Citizens of Portsmouth, welcome to our public work session. In accordance with Governor Ralph Northam's declaration of a state of emergency due to the novel coronavirus, Executive Order 51 on March 12, 2020, the local declaration of emergency ratified by the Portsmouth City Council and due to the coronavirus pandemic, which is continuing in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This called meeting of the Portsmouth City Council is being held by video conference on the 27th day of April 2021 without a quorum present in the City Council chamber in order to reduce the likely spread of the coronavirus in accordance with City Council Ordinance 20-21 and 2020-102. Each City Council member is participating from their home or other remote location, and I am in the City Council chamber. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir, Mr. Barnes,
Here.
Mr. Battle, Mrs. Willingsburg. Here. Mr. Moody,
Here.
Dr. Whitaker,
Present.
Mr. Woodard,
Here.
Mary Glasser.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And to my colleagues, I just want to say before we get started into the budget discussion, I want to thank our city staff and our city manager for the report backs on the items that we had discussed in our last budget session. I think it was very comprehensive and it answered a lot of the questions that we had as it relates to the budget. So understanding that we would like to proceed with the budget discussion, of course, giving every one of you an opportunity to speak to your concerns and then move the discussion forward and have any final thoughts and then proceed with the rest of our agenda because we do have a packed agenda this evening. So at this time, I would just like to open the floor up to any matters related to the budget as we need to discuss.
Mr. Mayor.
Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, good afternoon to everyone. And to our city manager Jones, want to thank her for the report back on the related items. And Mr. Mayor, I just want to find out, you think, to sort of help us through this process, since the city manager has outlined the issues that we need council consensus on, can we just go right down the items that she listed out in order and see where we are consensus wise? In the email that she sent, I believe it was on the 23rd. You muted, Mayor.
Thank you. That it's fine to proceed that way as long as there are no objections from council. I assume there are no objections, so we can proceed with those items to get the consensus so that we can move forward.
Okay.
So let us begin. With item there are a couple of things. We had certain members of council that asked for some report backs on specific items, and then there were three questions that were.
Yeah, excuse me, man. I was speaking to the report back from April 23rd that the city manager saying the items require consensus before adoption, and it starts out with Vice Mayor Barnes' name first, and then it moves on to Councilman Moody. I believe it's three.
Very good. I have that in front of me, sir. So we can begin with item one. The question that was presented was increase of $75,000 to economic development. That individual question was responded to appropriately. Do we have a consensus to move forward on that item? I just need a hand raise. Okay, so we have consensus on that item. We'll move on to the next item that was asked by Vice Mayor Barnes. The Portsmouth Public Schools funding request of 2 million additional over proposed budget of 58.8 million. And the appropriate response, I'm sure all of you have read that. We have provided an additional schools funding over 2.1 million over the previous year. Do we have a consensus? I'm sorry.
Yes.
You know what? You know what? I'm sorry. Let me make a statement first. I'm going to ask the manager to address these since she was the one that put the report together, and I think that's appropriate. Should there be any follow-up questions?
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Manager.
Yes, thank you. And first, I want to be clear when we're saying consensus, you're consenting on the statement that has been provided in the report, correct?
Right.
Some of these are self-explanatory. Others may need additional action. So I just want, as we go forward, if there's any additional action that may be required, please just state that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So the next one was the $2 million in for the public schools increase. Is there consensus?
Yes.
Yes, that's it.
Okay. And then the $2 million investment in recreation projects. Okay. And then the capital projects, the turf field, field houses, and new middle school.
Right. And this is putting these projects on the CIP.
No, this is having further discussion to define the project and then coming back with a specific request.
So, so this will be put in place before we vote on the final CIP budget then?
No, this will not take place this fiscal year at all unless you put additional funds in the budget. This is to say that staff will work with the schools to identify specific requirements, prioritize needs, and then come back with specific funding amounts to be appropriated in the future.
Okay.
Correct. Mm-hmm. So we are, I'm sorry, Madam City Manager.
Councilwoman Lucasberg, you have the
Thanks,
floor.
Mayor. Yes, thank you, sir. So we are agreeing to the actions that you are recommending in the report back. So our consensus is saying that we agree with the recommendations that the manager is putting forth to us.
Correct. That's
Okay.
why I wanted to be clear.
Yes.
That's why I want you to understand that that's what I'm taking from the consensus. Correct.
Correct. That I think some of them probably have some objection to that, but I am in agreement with the votes that have been taken to this point. Yes.
And that's what this discussion is about, to ensure that staff has clarity around what we need to do to respond appropriately to the council's actions.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Barnes, you have the floor, sir.
You muted.
For clarification, thank you, Dr. Whitaker. For clarification purpose, I just want to make sure I heard it right. The recommendation, well, what we're giving consensus to is not for this fiscal year budget, but for the next year.
And I wouldn't say a year specific. What I would say is that what this is directing staff to do is define the project, create the prioritization, and then come back and request funding once that's done. So there are ample funds that could allow for this project to start in this budget, but it would not enable it to be completed unless there are additional funds.
Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Whitaker.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go on.
I'm sorry, Mayor Glove. I ain't
Vice Mayor Barnes, are you finished, sir?
Yeah.
Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor, sir.
Okay. So if we want to begin this, that's what I was speaking of earlier. So if we agree to this, then we would have to have this as part of our CIP to begin the project this fiscal year, because I would like to see the turf field house issues, middle school. I would like to see that started this fiscal year, and that being a part of our CIP.
Correct. We have the funds in this budget to begin the work on it. We just do not have the funds to complete it because
Right,
we have not defined the final cost. But we
right.
have the funding to start that conversation and start that process. We do.
Okay. And so that's the consensus that you need.
That is the consensus that I
Oh,
need.
okay, okay.
Councilmember Woodard, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I was just wanted to be clear as well. So we have the funding to start this project, and we are getting the consensus today so we can put this on our CIP project plan.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, I am leading, right? Sorry. The next one is the water tower refurbishment project.
So did we
Excuse me,
get,
Madam City Manager. We need to see about the consensus. We did not get the consensus on this item, to my understanding. So we need to see how many of my colleagues want to proceed forward with the process, or want to not move forward. So if I could get a full show of hands, who wants to move forward with the process?
but you're talking about the putting the turf field houses and those.
I'm talking about the capital projects process we just discussed, sir.
Right, right. Okay.
And okay, and a show of hand of those who do not wish to move forward with the project. Mr. Moody? So right now it's 3-3. So that means that the project is on hold right now. And we'll move forward to the next question.
Okay, moving forward is
We can review this again before the final budget is voted on.
We can review this again.
okay.
Okay. You all are muted. Both of you are muted.
As of tonight, the project is stated as it was brought back in the report, and it's not anything that we're doing to move it forward. There's no consensus at this time, but it can be brought back before the final budget is adopted. Yes, sir. Thank you.
The next is the water tower refurbishment project. Is there a consensus?
And this is, once again, this is a consensus to what your report is recommending.
Correct.
Okay, so the report is recommending that we not move forward with this.
It's stating that we need to complete an analysis to understand what we're going to do with our water supply. And once that's been determined, then it would give us advice in terms of what we need to do with the water towers.
Okay.
Councilmember Moody, you have the floor, sir.
I can understand, the analysis on whether the water towers are going to be utilized for water pressure purposes. But once again, those water towers are almost gateways to our city. They're looking worse by the month. And we've been talking about this. I think our last report was in February, maybe a year ago, or maybe more recently. Bottom line is they're ugly. They're giving our city a bad image. So if it's any way that we can expedite this, I think it's desperately needed. All of us, me included, have gotten emails pointing out the obvious that they look pretty darn bad. So if there's consensus to try to expedite this, I'm all in support of that.
Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, I'm in agreement with what the city manager is recommending at this time. that is not feasible to repaint or refurbish until overall analysis is complete. And, and I would rather yield to this analysis taking place by our management team.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Woodard, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of these water towers, I think this is something that we all been getting feedback from the citizens of just about the cosmetic look. I understand from the city manager there is some technical or structural issues we may look at, but rusting water towers is the language of severe trouble. And if we don't do what we have to do to maintain those water towers and you know do the cosmetic painting and treating the rust, then we'll be in bigger trouble later on. So this is the issue that we may have to look at not putting off in the near future and do something about them right now. I don't think we should be talking about a process. We should be really putting this on the table and taking action on it.
Thank you, sir. And Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
My question is, who's doing the analysis? Perhaps we need a briefing on what that analysis consists of. What's the timeline? Is it in-house? Are we contracting that out? It's a lot of unknown questions there. So if we could get a briefing on that, I think we'd be grounded in the facts before we decide not to have them painted or do away with them.
Understood. And staff will bring back a full report regarding those questions and make sure that we respond to each question that you've raised. I think it's a good point.
Councilwoman Lucas Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I agree with my colleagues on this. The aesthetic look of the towers is in deplorable shape, but I was one of the members who, as my other colleagues, have toured the water treatment center out at the Lake Kilby, and I don't think we're in danger of any contaminants with the water. And I think that is something that the public and our colleagues would be interested in knowing sooner than later, so that we can just put to rest ease the mind of our citizens now that it is a subject of conversation. People are going to start driving by and looking at water towers now if they haven't been in that direction. So the sooner the better that we can get an analysis report and move forward on at least cleaning up the appearance of it. That will be, I think we will all be amenable to that action.
Definitely.
And Madam City Manager, if I may, I am in agreement in what I believe this particular response is saying is that it's not saying that we will not refurbish or repaint the tower, but it is saying that we need to do our due diligence and make the appropriate assessment of what is needed. And I think that we are all in agreement with that. And I would agree that we need to expedite the matter so that as soon as we are able to get a decision for or against or whatever that may be, we need to be prepared to make that. So thank you.
Thank you.
So do we get a consensus to at least agree to what the response was here so that we can move forward?
Yes.
You have the floor, sir.
No, I was.
Oh, we giving consensus? Okay, I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry. Okay. So I think we have 5. So we'll move forward, and Madam City Manager, we'll look forward to that report back.
Okay.
To the
Mayor,
yes.
I think Councilman Battle is pressing the icon to raise his hand.
Okay. We will get him entered into the meeting, sir.
Mr. Mayor.
How you doing, Miss Councilmember Battles? Good to hear your voice, sir. Glad you could join us.
Yes, sir. Well, just as you guys, it makes a lot of sense to get that analysis. Although I would want it to expedite it, You have to get the analysis because we don't know to what extent that we're going to have to move. So I'm in agreement with the majority here.
So
Thank you, sir. We're moving to the next item.
the next item is the 3% general wage increase.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Lucas Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I was in agreement with that. I know I had met, as well as I think Councilman Dr. Whitaker had also expressed an interest in moving the 3% from the November disbursement to July 1. And I think that is the recommendation of the city manager. So I was agreeing in consensus with the manager's report back.
Thank you, ma'am. Were there any other comments relating to this report back on the general wage increase? Seeing none, are we in consensus to move forward? If you could just show by raising your hand, that matter will be moved forward. Thank you. The next
Yes.
item on the 11th, go ahead, ma'am. I'm sorry.
So it's the $11 minimum wage increase for part-time, seasonal, and temporary staff.
Are we in agreement with this item, or are there any further discussions? Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Oh no, I was just raising my hand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You raised your hand before I got the further
Sorry about
discussion
that,
part,
man.
so
Too
I
quick.
apologize.
Too quick.
I'm a little delayed. So, are we in agreement if we could all raise our hand?
Are we
Okay.
getting Mayor? Are we getting Councilman Battle? I see he's on. I don't see his picture, but he just spoke a little while ago.
Councilman Battle, are you okay with cutting your camera on, sir?
I'll cut it on shortly, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Take your time.
I didn't hear the totality of his comment. Can somebody refresh me?
He said he'll turn himself on in a few minutes.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you very much.
The next item is the removal of the budgeted 430,000 HRA for retirees.
Is there a discussion on this particular item? Councilmember Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, and I want to thank the city manager for getting back with some facts. You know, we all have our own opinions, and I respect everyone's opinion, but there's usually only one set of facts, and they produce the facts. At our last meeting, it was said that this program was unfair, that people in VRS were not allowed, those 65 and over were not allowed to participate in HRA. Well, the facts proved otherwise. And actually, at its inception, there were 187 people in VRS that are in HRA at that time. And now there's 150, and that's more than police and fire. That's more than Portsmouth supplemental. At its inception, there were 419. Today, there are 316 participants, and that number is being reduced annually. Obviously, for the obvious reasons, people are passing away, and once the HRA was established and people were moved out of the city's health program, the liability of OPEB was reduced significantly by the tune of $25 million at that time. So many people on this program depend on that little bit of money annually to pay their medical bills. And yeah, you can say that yeah, they got Medicaid, they got this, but they've had this for a while, and to take it away at this point, I think it's very hard-hearted. I would appeal to my colleagues to let's hang on to this program for another year. It's already budgeted. It's not like we're adding anything to the budget. It's there. It's there at our discretion, of course. So I'm going to support it. I hope my colleagues do the same.
Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, just to make sure that we're clear on the facts that Mr. Moody, Councilman Moody, just stated. The report back on the participation of VRS, there may have been in our discussion some confusion over the retirement supplement versus the health reimbursement agreement. The issue that VRS retirees, as everyone knows, there are three retirement systems: the Fire and Police, Portsmouth Supplemental, VRS. The Fire, Police, and the Portsmouth Supplemental Plan retirement were receiving a supplement of $1,400, I believe, and they were requesting an additional amount. What was stated was that VRS retirees do not get that supplement. The HRA issue dealt with the reimbursement account, and the unfairness that I brought up there was not the fact that VRS retirees, Fire and Police, and Portsmouth Supplemental retirement. It wasn't that they could not participate. I think that when you look at the number of people who participated and the number of employees that we have or had during that time, that it was not made either through communication or access. It was not a fair process of allowing people to participate in it. That's what I was raising. And then with this, the supplement with the HRA, I think that for those who need health care programs at 65, it was a bad fiscal decision on the part of the city to do that. And as you said last week, Mayor, the city should not be in the business of health care. And I think with Medicare being available as the retirement health, as the health plan available, that's what should have been offered. And to continue this would further a policy that we should have never adopted from the beginning and just relied on the Medicare system. And so just want to make sure that the issue with VRS was really with the retirement, not with HRA. And so I am in full agreement that because of it being a bad fiscal policy, that we need to remove this in our next budget and move forward and invest these funds in areas that will be more beneficial.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
You know, once again, I don't know how you can say something is a bad fiscal policy when moving the employees out of the city's health plan reduced the OPEB liability by $25 million. My colleague also stated that a lot of people weren't aware of it. That's not true. That's not factual. Meetings were held at the Renaissance Hotel In fact, some former city managers even attended those meetings. So people were briefed on HRA. They knew what it was. And yes, at our previous meeting, you did say that it was not fair. HRA wasn't fair because of VRS. Well, as the facts show, thanks to the manager and staff's compiling the facts, there were more people in the plan at that time, and still are, that are on VRS retirement system. So I'm going to support it. There's only one set of facts. Opinions are one thing, but they could only be one set of facts, and I just shared them.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, because we have the citizens listening, and they are not always as aware of information, even councilors, and just want to make sure that they understand that the decision to move citizens who were working for Portsmouth off of the city's healthcare plan and onto Medicare is a decision that organizations all across the country make every day. And as far as it being a bad fiscal policy, it was at that time because we have seen that those funds could have been invested in our pension programs so that we wouldn't have had to go out and borrow the hundreds of millions of dollars to try to keep our pension
not true,
those funds could have been invested properly in our pension program. And so just like all other employees have access to Medicare at 65, these employees should have done the same thing. I think what was happening, instead of fiscal responsibility, it was political expediency. And I think that we need to make our decisions not on trying to satisfy people politically, but we have to make sure we're doing things in a fiscally responsible way. And so, once again, I support that, and we need to move forward with making a tough decision.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. My colleague once again mentions there was some political gain to be had. There was no political gain to be had. In fact, HRA came about from a city manager. So there was no political gain. Nobody ran out and was elected to office because of HRA was established. So that there again, you're really loose with the truth. But I'm going to support it. You know where I stand, and I hope at least 3 others join with me. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. And if there are no other questions, I will ask for a consensus, either in support of or against it being in the budget this time. But I did go ahead. Member Battle, you have the floor, sir. Councilmember Battle, you have the floor, sir.
Maybe it's true that everybody wasn't aware or didn't have access to this program, but I think that we maybe should look at not being like those that initiated this program and has run it so long. Maybe rather than abruptly doing this, we can say, you guys get your house in order because next year we won't, work with you and give you this stipend. That might be a better thing rather than radically just taking it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Battle. I'm going to ask Councilwoman Lucas Burke to have a chance to speak, and then I'll call on you, sir.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilman, for the discussion on this. We have had a lengthy discussion on it, and we've seen the facts, and we've seen the opinions. We've seen the report back from the city manager that states that the funding is there in this year's budget. So I would be in favor of us supporting this item for this year, and then look next year how we either phase out or move into a better posture of handling the city's fiscal funding in regards to the HRA and also the supplement. So I'm in favor of supporting the item as it is stated, because it is funded in this year's budget, and then us looking into the future how we allow these citizens who have been allowed to have this option, whether it was a bad fiscal plan or whether it was a bad health plan or whether the right people were enrolled or not. To not just snatch this from them. It's already budgeted. Move forward with the budget and proceed with whatever action we need to take fiscally and sound for next year.
Thank you, ma'am. Council Member Moody, sir, you have the floor.
I was going to just suggest that when we come to a consensus, just make it very clear on what the consensus is.
I shall, sir.
Want one to be retain it as it is, or not to retain it. I think are the two clear options.
I shall make that clear, sir. But as I was stating earlier, and I'll reiterate as I said before, when you turn 65, your health care is Medicare after your working lifetime. The fact that we the city, and I agree that we did transfer risk in taking off of those seniors off of the health plan. But at the same time, it's no different than any other business decision. When you are expending dollars in one area and you take it off of one area, there are other competing areas that those dollars can be applied to. That's just one thought. But the other thought is this was a generous move by the city. I can share with you that municipalities, school systems, government systems, they do not provide health insurance for folks that are 65 or older. And the reason is because you paid into that system all of your working life. And to ask a municipality to continue to fund your health care when you've already paid for it, I just think is not a good fiscal policy. Now, we can all agree or disagree, but that's the 2 cents that I wanted to add. As we go forward, we'll all make the decisions that are in the best interest of our citizens. So, Mr. Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Well, to start with, I don't think we're completely funding their health care on the same type of plan that they were on with the city. But the other point I want to make, I think there are ways to be more efficient with HRA and the rollover. I was not aware that the rollover existed, and as my colleague Lisa Lucas Burke said, I think after this budget cycle, during the course of the year, we can come back and think of ways to make it more efficient instead of taking a meat cleaver to it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. And so we're at the point of the consensus. Is there a consensus to continue the HRA? If you agree to continue the HRA for this year at the funding amount, if you would show your hand for a consensus vote, then we will note that. This is for if you agree. Okay, duly noted. This next vote is if you disagree with the funding of the HRA and you believe that we should move in a different direction with that particular plan. That vote is 4-3 on a consensus.
So, can I
go ahead, Madam City Manager.
So just to be clear, we're saying with that consensus, we're taking that from the budget this year.
Right.
That is what that represents.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to be clear. Okay, with that, the next one is the one-time bonus for retirees that is currently not budgeted.
Do we have a discussion on this matter? Before we have the discussion, though, I do want to add one point. for all of us to bring some of my new colleagues up to speed. In October of 2022, October 22nd, 2019, the previous council adopted an ordinance. And you can read the ordinance. It refers to the Portsmouth Police and Fire and Supplemental Retirement Systems. And I will just read to you the end part of that ordinance. Notwithstanding the foregoing, in no event shall City Council approve or authorize adjustments to retirement allowances unless the Portsmouth Fire and Police Retirement Systems is funded at no less than 80% of the actuarial accrued liability. So in real terms, what that means is 80% funding puts us at a solvency level that is standard with the market or with other organizations. And so anything below that puts us at risk. And we adopted this ordinance after much discussion for the purpose of allowing us to get that fund back to where it needed to be, so that we could ensure that every retiree that worked for the city of Portsmouth, whether it was police or fire or supplemental, that last retiree that drew that last amount of money, we wanted to ensure that that money was there for that person. So that was the reason for this ordinance, and that was the reason I supported it, and I brought this ordinance to my colleagues. Just wanted to share that background. The floor is open for discussion.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the manager's recommendation that it not be budgeted, the one-time bonus.
If you're in agreement with the manager's recommendation, if I could get a show of hands for a consensus. We have a consensus, a majority consensus that on this item, Madam City Manager.
The next item was the number of vacant positions.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Before we leave the this whole retirement and healthcare issue, there's another issue in here that I'm not sure if the city manager is addressing here. Just one. In our city council report back in February that dealt with the retirement supplements, there was also some additional information that was given where the members of the fire police retirement system and Portsmouth supplemental retirement system were receiving an additional allowance of $100 a month based on when they retired, or either $200 a month based on when they retired, or some also received $200 a month based on when they retired. There were three different payments, 100, 200, and 200 based on a retirement date. Is this payment still in the budget?
I'm going to turn that question over to our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Mimi Terry, to address, because I want to be sure that you're getting all the information you need.
Okay.
So, Ms. Terry, are you there? Or
yes, I am. Good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So that payment is a part of the retirement system, what we pay every month to the actuarial or John Hancock on behalf of the retirees. So yes, to your question, it's just a part of the $29 or $27 million that we pay on behalf of the retirees. In one of the report backs to you all, I actually have identified how much that is annually on top of the retirement. Can you cut your microphone off? Oh. I was trying to keep the echo down. Okay, so
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Chair.
Is she finished?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Whitaker, was Ms. Terry finished?
She is.
Okay.
I believe. Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Dr. Whitaker.
Well, were you finished,
Who am
Ms.
I,
Terry?
who's asking me a question?
I was just asking where you finished.
Oh, yes. I
Okay.
hope I was clear.
Well, in the report back that you sent us, it says that the members receive this amount monthly. It says the members
Go ahead, I
retire.
can hear you now.
Okay. The report back that you gave us, it wasn't that this was being paid into to John Hancock. It says that members retiring on or after July 1st, 1992, but before July 1st, 93, shall receive an additional allowance equal to monthly payments of $100 from the date of retirement until retiree's 62nd birthday.
Correct.
So is that going to them from us or to John? I'm not clear. You said it was going to John Hancock, but this says it's going to them.
Okay, John, so that let me clarify. We pay the retirees through a third party, which is John Hancock. That's just the clarification. Do these payments go directly to retirees? Absolutely, as part of their monthly benefit. So they get their retirement check as it relates to the hours and the compensation and the time that they've worked, as well as the ones that qualified during those time periods in which it's stated. From 92, if they retired after 92, they received $100 additional toward their retirement up to the age of 62. I believe the other one was after anyone retired by 93, they received an additional $100. So that's $1,200 per month in addition to their retirement.
It's 200.
That one should be 65.
It's 62. It's two 200s.
Okay, two 200s. One was 100 at 62. Two was 100 at 62, and another one was 200 at 65.
Right.
I don't have any information right in front of me. It's pretty much from memory. And so in other words, you have retirees who receive an additional $1,200 a month. $1,200 a year, and you have retirees that receive an additional $2,400 a year on top of their retirement supplement, benefit.
Right. And so my question is, why is it that the retirees who are in these two systems receiving this monthly payment, but retirees who are in VRS are not receiving this? And what's the justification?
To my understanding from my review, it was council's decision and determination at that time. I'm not sure why this benefit was offered. Of course, it's an in-house system versus a state system like VRS. So that may have been a benefit, and maybe Councilman Moody, who was here at the time, may be able to speak to it more so than I. But this has been in effect, as you can see, since 92 or 93. What we pay for that benefit for those retirees is about $480,000 for fire and police annually, and about $180,000, somewhat in that ballpark, to the retirees in PSRS, those two legacy systems.
So that's about $660,000 that those two systems get, but I'm not clear why VRS retirees aren't receiving this.
Again, I can't speak to that. I wasn't here back then. That was just the ordinance, and that was council's decision at that time in determining the benefit for the retirement systems, for the legacy systems at that current time.
So if we can't explain it, then is this just some type of arbitrary payment that certain persons get to receive versus others? Because if there's no basis for it, and you are chief financial officer, you don't have a basis for it, then it becomes arbitrary.
So what I will say in my defense is that it was council's decision to make that determination. So if I'm understanding what you're asking, does it make sense? I did not make
No,
that
no,
determination.
no. I don't want to put you. I don't want to put you in that position, because I hear you very loud and clear. That was a council decision. The point I'm making to my colleagues is that our chief financial officer cannot substantiate it, and does not have a rationale for why we're spending $660,000 to certain retirees and not to all. So yeah, I'm not holding you responsible. I'm just pointing that out.
And I also would like to say that that still is ongoing. So we only have about 20 or so members that are still active city employees in that particular retirement system, that when they retire, they also will receive that benefit.
Mm-hmm. But it represents $660,000 in our budget.
Correct. It goes as part of what we pay. You weren't on council at that time. So we did a presentation to identify, and I think these are part of your report backs as well, how much we actually pay into the retirement system every month. And a combined total is between $27 and $29 million. And those are the dollars that we pay toward the retirement system, and those dollars are part of that to pay the benefit for our retirees.
Okay.
Councilmember Moody, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't on council when those plans were discussed and approved by council. I came on in '98, but I would suggest before we take any action that we find out some history on why council made that decision. I'm sure there's a record of it, perhaps in council minutes. We can certainly query some of the people that were around at that time and get some history before we just arbitrarily do away with it and perhaps put us in a bad position.
Councilwoman Lucas Burke.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the conversation for our finance officer. And that was going to be my question. What is the historical background on this? How long has this payment been initiated? I mean, $600,000 is not any chump change by any means. And if there are only 20 members in the plan now, and if that's dispersed over that 20, I don't know how the payments are dispersed now, or is that what the historical payment that was distributed to it? But since it started before Councilman Moody came on the council in 1998, that's been well over 20 plus years that this payment has been arbitrarily occurring without anybody's oversight or questioning of it. And I think that we are due some more information on how we proceed with this.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Woodard, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to concur with Councilmember Moody and Lucas. It do need to be some more research done on this particular situation. It's $660,000 out there. I know we say that this is peanuts on the dollars and in our budget, as our council members sometimes say, but when you start finding a lot of these loopholes of additional spending, it turns into walnuts. So I think we definitely need to look into this more before we take any action today. But it's something that I think we're on the right track of possibly removing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Ms. Terry, ma'am, you had a question, or you?
Yes,
you raised your hand, so I wanted to acknowledge you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure there are only 20 members, active employees who are in that retirement system that are current employees, although we have 600 and some members in that retirement system. I just wanted to clarify that.
Right. So it's, I'm sorry, Mr.
Go.
So it's not just 20 people receiving it. It's more than that.
Correct.
Right. Okay. For 660,000, I thought.
That'd be a large,
Yeah.
large bounty.
Yeah.
20 people receiving $600,000.
Yeah. Well, listen, man.
That's how it came across.
You say sign me up. Sign me up.
Right. So it's everybody in the system who has yet to turn 65 or 62 or at this present time. So again, like Dr. Whitaker, when you read, if you retired in 93 and you hadn't turned 62, you're receiving it. If you retired in 93, I don't have the paperwork right in front of me, but until you turn 62, when you retired, if you retired at 40 and you were in that system and you hadn't turned 62 yet, you're getting that additional dollar amount. If you retire today and you're in that system and you have not turned 65 or 62 and you're in either one of those systems, you will get that additional payment on top of your retirement check.
So those persons, there were some persons who could have retired at 40, gotten another job in another city, and Portsmouth would still be paying them $200 a month.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Terry.
Mr. Mayor, I would agree with my colleagues. I wouldn't mind to getting some more history on this, and our city manager reporting back if it's okay with our colleagues, and we would make a decision before we vote on the budget.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I definitely will report back on that because that's me getting information as well, and I want to make sure that I totally understand it also. So thank you. The next night. Oh.
Councilmember Woodard, I didn't want to disregard your hand. You did have your hand up. Did you want to make a statement or comment, sir?
Oh no, I'm okay. I think I got everything.
Okay.
You know, like I said, we get more information on it, so we can get back to this matter at a later date.
Thank you, sir.
The next item, which is the number of vacant positions, was an information item, so I'm not going to spend any time on that unless there are questions.
The only question. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Go ahead, sir. You have the floor.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. The only question I have is, what is the dollar amount associated with these vacancies? And if you can report back to us on not just the numbers, but how much it represents dollar-wise in our budget.
Okay. I will definitely report back on that. The next item is similar to the one that we've discussed before, which is the capital projects, turf fields, field houses, and new middle school facilities.
Councilmember Woodard, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, so are we getting a new consensus on this since Paul is here now?
If it is the desire of council to call for a consensus, then I will support that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the consensus to move forward with the capital projects, as we had discussed before,
Mr. Mayor.
It was 3-3. So those in favor of, can I see your hand, please?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Battle, go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
You have the floor.
I think we kind of got off a little, or maybe I didn't explain it properly. I was talking about a turf and field house for Osinoka High School.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. That's it.
Okay.
Okay. So and I didn't know if you were present, but we did take a previous vote whether to move it forward in the capital improvement project, and it was a 3-3 tie. So therefore, we put it on hold. Now the vote was called back, and sir, because you're here and we called for a consensus to move it forward, we did get the four votes to move forward with that. Madam City Manager.
Okay. The next item is before and after school programs and youth and adult services.
Are we okay with the response from our manager on this one, or Do we need discussion? Do we have a consensus on the city manager's response on this item? We do. Madam City Manager.
And the last item is the Sportsplex.
Do we have a consensus on this item? Yes, ma'am. We have a consensus
Okay.
on this item. That concludes the report backs and the consensus. And thank you, Madam City Manager. Is there anything new?
Yes. The next portion I wanted to. Oh,
Vice Mayor, he has his hand up, sir. You have the floor.
Yes, I wanted to add one more thing. During the spring break, my son and I got a chance to go into our gyms, and one of the things I noticed in Capitol Manor Gym recreation facility and neighborhood recreation facility, the floors are very slippery and they're dangerous. I would like to if there's no objection from council, to put in the budget where we remodel those floors so that our kids can be safe when they're in our gyms.
Perhaps, Madam City Manager, I know we have a budgeted amount for improvements, so perhaps that could go on the potential list
right.
for improvements.
And I think there's an upcoming meeting with the council liaisons with the school board to hopefully we can use that opportunity to start talking about how we prioritize some of these projects and ensure they are completed based on the funding that we provide schools. So I think there's.
As Mr. Pomachek weighed in on those floors.
Are you talking about in the schools or in somewhere else?
This is in the rec center.
Oh, rec centers. Oh, we definitely have funding to address the recreation upgrades and everything already in the budget. I thought this was a school. I'm sorry. Yeah, we have that funding.
And that was regarding the Charles Pete thing too as well.
Correct. Yes, correct. Yes, Charles Pete. Yes. We also, you'll hear later as part of the CDBG presentation that we're also looking for those funds to do some of those upgrades.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Man.
Thank you, Madam City Manager.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Woodard, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, before we move on, I just wanted to see, was there a timeline on that on the extra funds that are allocated through the legacy the legacy retirement system? Is there a timeline for us to get that information back?
You will get the information prior to having to make the final decision on the budget. So we'll try to turn that around as fast as possible, but you will have that information before you have to make that final decision.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We've covered all those items once again. Are we ready for the next presentation?
Yes. I'll introduce it. Mr. Jeffrey Crimer, the Community Development Manager, will present the annual action plan for the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, and HOME, which is a 5-year plan that is updated every year and supports housing, community, and economic development activities. The proposed action plan, this is year 3 of the 5-year plan. To ensure approval by Housing and Urban Development, otherwise HUD, proposed budgetary items must meet the national objective and strategically align with the city's 5-year action plan, which runs from 2019 to 2023. In response to council's interest in promoting neighborhood recreation opportunities, staff took a fresh look at neighborhood recreation areas meeting the criteria and included them in this plan. Additionally, staff worked with Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority to identify funding to reinstitute a housing rehabilitation program. The plan must be on public display for review and comment for 30 days prior to the public hearing. In that regard, the ad ran in the Bridges tabloid on Sunday, April 18th, and is currently on the city's website. In addition, the plan requires a 45-day review period by HUD before we can start the program year on July 1, 2021. In compliance with the required timeline, the public hearing and adoption is scheduled for Tuesday, May 25th, and the program year begins on July 1, 2021. Mr. Crimer, you can make your presentation, please.
Thank you. Um, Good evening, Mayor Glover, Vice Mayor Barnes, City Council members. I'm Jeff Crimer with the City Planning Department, and as the City Manager said, I'm going to give you a presentation on the proposed 2022 Community Development Block Grant Program and Home Investment Partnership Program funds. Next slide, please. So the funds that we have for fiscal 22 are the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, and the Home Investment Partnership Program, or HOME, and they're available to the city as an annual entitlement from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The city prepares an annual action plan detailing how the resources will be used to implement the goals outlined in the 5-year CP and fiscal 22 is the third plan of the 5-year cycle. Next slide, please. So this gives you an overview of the current year CDBG allocation and the allocation that HUD has notified us that will be available for fiscal 22, and it's fairly comparable. Fiscal 22 is at 1.6 million, 13,918, and the current year is at 1,614. We have program income projected of 261,895. We have no prior year funds that are available at this time for fiscal 22, and that gives us total revenue of 1.8 million, and we had total requests of a little over 2 million. Next slide, please. So we in terms of the CDBG, we are allowed to expend annually up to 15% of the annual allocation for what are classified as public service activities. And we can also we can budget 15% of the program income that was received in the current year for public services in the next year. And so that allows the city to expend the 334,490 for public services in fiscal 22. And this shows the proposed funding of the public service activities, and it shows against their current year funding and requested funding. I'd just like to note all these activities, all these public services are currently funded except for the last one, and they're at fairly similar levels of funding. So we're proposing the city's Parks and Recreation Senior Transportation Program at 42,000, Parks and Recreation Kids Meals at 52, Parks and Recreation Youth Leadership at 13,000, the Independence Center services for the disabled at 25,000, the Portsmouth Volunteers for the Homeless Housing Counseling for homeless persons and at-risk persons of 34,285. For kids, their homeless intake services at 35,000. Eggleston Homeless Employment Services at 40,000, and then the new activity being the Department of Economic Development's Workforce Development at $93,060.80. Next slide, please. HUD also allows us to budget up to 20% of the allocation for administration and planning for the CDBG program, and so we're proposing that about 142,000 be used for the city's overhead and planning and fair housing. 100,000 has been proposed for DSS to work with the Portsmouth Homeless Action Consortium and administrating of that organization, including them applying for other HUD funding that the homeless agencies apply for and use. And then 80,000, about 81,000 for the workforce development program for some of their administrative needs. And I think most of those are just a one-time need. Next slide, please. The final portion of the CDBG consists of essentially the bricks and mortar activities. And there's no cap on this in terms of what we can spend. We could spend the whole allocation if we so choose. We're proposing redevelopment of two neighborhood parks. One, the Maplewood Park on Portsmouth Boulevard, and then the 8th and Jefferson Park. And those are both budgeted at the 381. We're also proposing $228,000 for the Wesley Community Service Center. They want to replace the roof. We funded some other activities there over the last couple years, and so they want to do the roof in fiscal 22. The Eggleston laundry service, they want to purchase another piece of laundry equipment. They use that to create jobs at their laundry service, and so they want to purchase a washer, a commercial grade washer for $28,000. The PRHA program is a housing rehab program, and then this final activity is the June Tea Festival Company. They had requested $90,000, and we felt that they just hadn't quite met the criterion this year, and they're sort of working on the activity, trying to get it to a fundable stage. So we didn't recommend any funding for that organization this year. Next slide, please. This gives you an overview of the home allocation compared to last year. It's pretty similar. It's a slight decrease. Plus, we have some uncommitted funds from last year, and that was the CHOTO, the set aside of 15% that we have to do annually for the Community Housing Development Organization, and that's $64,000, giving us a total revenue of $489,000, and we had $574,000 of requests. Next slide, please. And this gives you an overview of the proposed funding for the home program in comparison to current year funding and their requested funding. We're proposing providing $161,000 for kids for providing tenant-based rental assistance for low-income households. We are proposing $200,000 to the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission to assist with the ongoing down payment and closing assistance program that we have for first-time home buyers. And then the 128 is for the CHOTO set aside, includes last year's 15% and this year's 15%. And we're going to work with the Southampton Roads chapter of Habitat for Humanity. They have indicated an interest in coming back and working in the city next year. And next slide, please. And then this just gives you an overview of what our next steps are. On May 25th, we noted that you would be conducting the public hearing, and at that meeting you can adopt the annual action plan, and then we'll get it submitted to HUD as soon as possible after that meeting. The program year will start on July 1. We can incur expenses of that time. HUD will probably finish up the review about the middle of July, and but that doesn't stop us from moving forward as of July 1. And next slide, please. And I can take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Crump. I am interested in trying to find out how our community block grant funds can be used in helping to expand shelter for homeless and incorporating mental health and employment assistance. Uh, are there any plans, action plans for addressing the homeless situation in our city as far as expanding the availability of shelter?
Um, I there's nothing in this year's budget for that. Yeah, so we have the money through the civic organization grant. I know we provide money to her through that program to operate the family shelter that's over on Columbus. Next to Dale Homes. So I know that that money's there, but there's nothing in this year's budget specifically for shelter operation or shelter development.
Is that something that the block grant funds can be used for?
Yes, so you could do it. There's a variety of things you could do. You could fund shelter operations. You could fund the rehab of a shelter. You could fund the construction of a shelter. Those are all eligible CDBG activities.
So have we ever looked at strategically how we can expand our program to incorporate providing more shelter for a homeless environment and mental health assistance, employment assistance, something that would be almost like a one-stop shop situation for persons that need that type of assistance with housing, mental health, employment, drug assistance. Have we ever strategically approached it from that standpoint?
Well, so the Portsmouth Homeless Action Consortium, PHAC, they are the provider of homeless services here in Portsmouth, and they annually, and so we've given them the $100,000 to help them administer that through DSS. And part of what they do is they come together annually and they apply to HUD for funds through the Hearth Act, and I think they get in the range of a million to maybe 1.2, 1.3 million annually. And they use that money. It supports shelter operations. It supports job training. It supports a variety of things. I'm not sure what, off the top of my head, I'm not sure of everything that they do with that money. We have used CDBG in the past. For instance, we used the CDBG probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and we put close to $1 million into that shelter that her runs now, and essentially tore it back to the ground and rebuilt it. And so we have done that, and we also had the allocation of CARES Act funds. That was a CDBG allocation of it. We got, I think, close to $1 million of that, and we've been using that to provide some shelter operations for PVH and her over the last year. So we get into the homeless issue based, when we can, when there's money available and there is a need. We have done that, and we just aren't doing it in fiscal 22.
Yeah, there appears to be money available. I think what I'm trying to get to is that we haven't really put forth a strategic effort to make sure that something of the magnitude I'm speaking of come into reality. I think presently we've for years rotating from different houses of worship or other organizations for people to stay. I think we can do better than that. And Mr. Mayor, if there's no objection from our colleagues, I think we should have our city manager to look into examining using our CBG funds to expand our homeless shelter and mental health employment, to bring back more of a strategic approach to how we can provide a much broader services for our very vulnerable in our community, and not just passing it on to different organizations, but actually trying to come up with a plan to put a facility in place that would meet those needs with funds, not just these funds, but these funds are certainly appear to be available, but other funds as well.
Well, sir, I think that that is a very timely discussion. I can share with you that I have been in a number of discussions with the executive director of our Portsmouth Volunteers for the Homeless, and you are correct. We have done a patchwork of housing our homeless. Even during COVID, the sheriff stepped up and provided housing for some of our most vulnerable citizens. So I can assure you that the manager and I have had those discussions. We do need to get the stakeholders in the room and then come up with that strategic plan of meeting those needs of our most vulnerable citizens to include. And I think as the strategic plan unfolds, it must include what my vision is. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. We have to have a shelter, an environment where those folks can go and get the appropriate services to ensure that they have a chance to live a good life.
Yeah.
I would agree with you.
All right.
Vice Mayor Barnes.
So I have a question for the grant. Does it the CBDG, does it have anything in it that allows us to put lights out as far as at these basketball courts that we have in the city? I remember years and years ago, before I even got into politics, I remember watching a city council meeting, and a man came forward and spoke about our courts don't have lights for our children, so they can't participate on those courts at a certain time. So, to my question, like I said, is there anything in there that allows us to put those lights out at those goals, and also lights for downtown on High Street to kind of light up High Street as well?
So yeah, we can use CDBG. Those would be both eligible public facility types of activities. The installation of lighting. There's two parts to CDBG. So we have to it has to be eligible, which this is, and it also has to be fundable. And the fundable is meeting a national objective, and primarily that's meeting a low-income benefit, such as serving a low-income area. So if we could define an area where these basketball courts are and define it, very distinctly, and it's usually based on census tracts and block groups, and then we could calculate for that service area what the low mod percent of persons in that service area are, and if we get to it being predominantly low income, meaning 51% or more of the persons in that service area are low income, it would be fundable. It would meet a national objective. With regard to lighting on High Street, we would probably, there's probably a couple different ways we'd have to look at finding out if it's fundable. One would be, again, defining that service area and verifying if it's predominantly low income. The thing about the service area, though, is we have to document that it's primarily a residential service area. So that's something you have to keep in mind. An alternative could be, if you can't get to the low income benefit, is looking at its potential as a slum and blight area. And so that would be going out and defining this area and identifying the characteristics of the slum and blight and documenting that, and then using the CDBG to address the slum and blight. And so part of the slum and blight could be that, there's poor lighting, it causes safety issues, and therefore the solution is to improve the lighting within the slum and blight area.
I'm totally fine of how we need to dress it up. I just want to make sure we get it done if we can.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Councilwoman Lucas Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the report, Mr. Kramer. And I think I remember asking you probably the same question again last year about the Chodo and our community action agency. So which community development group does this extend to? Because I know that we are partners with Stop Inc. And they have locations in Portsmouth, which we participate with them to ensure that they are, getting the supports that they need. So, which community development group is this allocated towards?
So the Chodo organization, and a Chodo is a very specific, has a very specific makeup of its board, and with regard to where people live and their income. And so we're working with Southampton Roads, the Southampton Roads chapter of Habitat for Humanity. I do not believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't believe that Stop, well, I know that they've become a CDD. I don't believe that the makeup of their board is specific enough to allow them to qualify as a Chodo.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, Ms. Mayor, as part of the council having to approve the action plan and funding proposal that will be submitted to HUD, can we make sure that this plan has some funds set aside in this fiscal budget to begin examining the expansion of our homeless facilities and those items of mental health and employment that I mentioned earlier, that there be some specific funding set aside for that in this fiscal year that our manager would work with and communicating, so that when we come back to vote on this, that's presented to us.
Yes, Madam City Manager, could you address that, please?
Yes, we have funding to begin that development of that comprehensive plan. So I'll just make sure to work with staff to let you know what funds we have that we can pull from at this point.
Well, my issue is that using funding from our community block grant.
Right. It'll probably be a combination of community block grants as well as year-end funding that we have available.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Barnes, you have the floor, sir.
Well, Councilman Woodard had his up for me. He can go ahead. I'm sorry.
Councilmember Woodard, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to make sure that we clear, and this is about what Dr. Whitaker was saying. Are we getting a consensus to expand the actual homeless center? Is we getting a consensus on that tonight? But today,
sir, it's not my understanding that we're getting a consensus to expand anything. What I believe we have a consensus was to move forward with the strategic plan and set aside some funding for a potential proposal that may come forward to get that done. So that's my understanding.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Vice Mayor Barnes, sir.
And I would just say the same regarding the lighting issue that I mentioned as well. Could we get something regarding that as well coming back to us?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Kramer, thank you once again for your in-depth report, and we appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you.
Madam City Manager, are there any more
That concludes my items.
We do have a need to go into closed session. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Mr. Mayor, be- be- before we go into closed session, can I just bring up the issue regarding the agenda item 21-129? That's the language amending the ordinance pertaining to procurement, minority business. I would like to get the consensus of council tonight to defer this item to our next meeting, and given time for the minority contracting committee leaves Mr. Vice Mayor Barnes and I to meet with Attorney Stromberg to discuss. I think there's some language that needs to be inclusive of this so that it can strengthen this ordinance more.
I don't see any challenge with that, sir. And I would just add, if we could ask that the city manager participate in that meeting as well.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So I just want to make sure we got permission from council to do that.
Well, can we see a consensus by show of hands? I think we meet the standards, so we'll proceed accordingly with that.
Council members, if you don't mind, if I could ask a question, would you object if you're going to defer this item that it be deferred to May the 25th?
Okay.
Versus your May 11th meeting, please?
Okay. That's fine with me, Mayor.
Okay with
me. And Dr. Whitaker, just want to let you know, we're not completed. We haven't completed all the changes we're going to make. We can make those two very quickly, so we went ahead and did those, but there's more to be done. Okay. And we can talk about it. Yeah, we're not done with that.
Right.
The definition section still has to be done. Those two ordinance changes were the easy ones up front we could do very quickly, but we have to do a little more research. But I'd be happy to meet with you and the city manager and to figure out how we plan to move forward.
Okay, and the vice mayor, he's on that committee as well.
Sure.
All right.
Okay, and one other item before we do go into closed, we're good with that? I just want to make council aware, we as a council need to move forward with the process of choosing a new city attorney, and at some point after that, a new city assessor. So I need a consensus from council for us at least to decide to open up the application process. We're going, I believe, through our human resources department for additional applicants, or are we going to close the applicant pool and begin to move forward with the process of interviewing the applicants who have submitted their application? What is the pleasure? Is it the pleasure to open it up for additional applicants until maybe for the next 2 weeks, or is it to close the applicants that we currently have and move forward with the interviews? Dr. Whitaker.
Mr. Mayor, are you speaking of both city attorney and city assessor positions?
Just city attorney right now.
Just, I would say, if my colleagues agree, if we could keep it open for another 30 days.
It's not open, it's actually closed. We would have to reopen.
Yeah, we would reopen it for another 30 days.
30 days takes us into, we'll have to look at the schedule. I think we can, no, I don't think. We'll get back to you all with the schedule, but if I could just get a consensus, just a show of hands, are we okay with moving forward? We'll report back what that process looks like.
Well, is there an issue with the 30 days or?
I'm not sure because it may conflict with some other things we have on the schedule. I don't know if there's an issue with it, but I'd like to be certain before I commit to the 30. So if it's not a problem, let me check, right? Let me take a moment to check with the clerk to look at the schedule.
Well, can we do this, Mr. Mayor? If there's a consensus from council to open it up for 30 days and we agree to that, then if there's an issue, can you just bring that back to us?
That's what we'll agree to. We'll agree to open it up for 30 days. And if something comes up that we need to communicate and I need to inform that there's a change, we will then proceed accordingly.
Okay.
Fair enough. Councilmember Moody, sir, you have the floor. You're muted, sir.
How long was the process open to begin with?
Councilman Moody, that process was open for approximately, I want to say a month and a half to 2 months.
Yeah,
It's been closed since the end of March, and the city assessor position is to close April 30th. So that position has been closed for, the city attorney has been closed for at least a few weeks.
Okay, and it was open approximately 2 months.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
So we will proceed accordingly, opening it up for 30 days. If there's a difference and we need to make an adjustment, you all will be notified. Thank you. Now we've reached the point that we need to go into a closed session.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have a motion.
Councilwoman Lucasberg,
Yes.
would you please read the motion?
Okay, Madam Clerk, are we ready to proceed?
Yes, ma'am, you can read the motion.
I move to go into a closed electronic meeting pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3708A.3 and City Council Ordinance 2020-102 and Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711A8 for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice specifically regarding police pursuit policies and Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711A6 for the purpose of discussing or considering the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where if made publicly, initially the financial interest of the city would be adversely affected, specifically regarding Hampton Roads Regional Jail.
Is there, we have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Battle, Mrs. Lucasberg,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Woodard,
Yes.
Mayor Glover.
Yes. We're going in
We
close.
are in close.
Certified that to the best of his or her knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting just concluded.
We have a motion. Second. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Who seconded?
Who seconded it? Who seconded the motion? Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Battle,
Yes.
thank you. Mrs. Lucasberg,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Woodard,
Yes.
Mayor Glover.
Yes. Let's take a 3-minute break before we go into the regular meeting. Thank you.